Will the Nightmare realize his dream, or will BJ want to pen this story with a different ending? Congo is forced to check the mirror and find a ground game, and Florian and Guida attempt to put forth a lightweight classic. Sit back, it's the Fight Network's preview of UFC 107 coming up now. Hey Fight fans, I'm John Paul. Welcome to the Fight Network's official preview of UFC 107 for this Saturday night in new territory for the company as they descend upon Memphis, Tennessee. In today's show, John Randine stops by to break down the card with myself and offer his picks for the fights this weekend. But we start our preview with a look ahead to the main event this Saturday for the UFC Lightweight Championship. BJ Penn will attempt to make his third defense of his UFC Lightweight Championship on Saturday night as the 14-5-1 prodigy steps into the octagon with the Ultimate Fighter Season 1 winner Diego "Nightmare" Sanchez entering this bout with 21 wins against 2 losses. Sanchez will attempt to become the 4th cup winner to strike gold and win his 3rd straight fight since moving down to 155 pounds.
I'm always going to go with BJ. He's just really good. I like him. My only concern with him is going into a fight sometimes not in shape. And you get past that first, second round, and you're tired. And Diego's survived 2 rounds. There's a good chance he's going to survive a 3rd one. And if you're tired, he's going to rise up. He's one of those guys that just don't stop. So BJ needs to come in shape and hopefully get those first 2 rounds on his side if he doesn't finish him off. So when that 3rd round comes and Diego's coming his hardest and he's tired, that it's still 2 rounds to 1.
BJ is good at everything, so it's going to be very difficult for Diego. I think Diego, I think he found a great home at 155, but I think that at this stage right now, it's going to be very difficult to defeat BJ. I think that just again style-wise, if Diego's good at taking a guy down, grounding him out, and he's adept at kickboxing, but I think that BJ is going to be able to defend the takedowns. If it goes to the ground, going to be real mobile on the ground and outwork Diego. Diego's best shot, I think, to be continuously ground him out and try to slow the fight down a bit and take him to the later rounds where we've seen BJ get tired. But probably not going to happen.
BJ, I like his jiu-jitsu. Yeah, he's great, and he was champion. He's good. He's really good.
I think that BJ Penn, the way he's evolved with the sport and the way he's been involved for so long is going to prevail. I don't think there's many people out there right now in the sport that will match him or come close. They're going to have to come up with great game plans. He's just so solid all around. He's a great boxer. He's very hard to take down. And what do you do when you take down BJ Penn? His submissions are really second to none.
John Randine joins us to break down UFC 107, the main event, BJ Penn and Diego Sanchez. We saw BJ Penn humbled back in January against George St. Pierre, more comfortable down at 155 as we saw in August against Kenny Florian.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to argue BJ Penn is the best 155-pound fighter in the world. Whether you fight in Dream, Strikeforce, or the UFC, the guy's skills are immense. Striking game, the grappling game, and his conditioning now at 155 pounds. Since winning the title, he's taken out all of his opponents at 155 pounds, and he's an absolute force to be reckoned with.
Diego Sanchez, a guy that has evolved maybe more than any tough alumni. Moving down to 155 pounds earlier this year, he's won 2 of his fights there. Stylistically, what does he take from that Kenny Florian fight where he fought BJ Penn and improve upon that strategy and find an answer for BJ Penn?
I think for Diego Sanchez, his strategy, believe it or not, is to try to put BJ Penn on his back. He was working with Janji and Saulo Ribeiro, 2 of the best jiu-jitsu instructors in the world, so there's nothing he hasn't seen before that BJ Penn's going to offer from his back. So if you can put BJ Penn there and try to work, maybe not take him out, but go for the decision win, he could win the title.
How do these two compare in terms of standing? I think BJ Penn is one of the more underrated strikers in the industry right now, and Diego Sanchez, we saw in that fight with Joe Stevenson going circles around him on his feet.
I think that's where BJ Penn's going to win this fight. He's going to want to keep the fight standing, utilize that devastating jab of his to set up his strikes and punish Diego Sanchez over the course of 5 rounds. I think that's where BJ Penn will win this fight.
You're going with BJ Penn. Where is this fight going to stop?
I think BJ Penn's going to win late in the 3rd or the 4th round. I think he's going to be conditioned, he's going to be ready to go, and he's going to take out the Nightmare by TKO.
In heavyweight action on Saturday night, 12-4 former UFC heavyweight champion Frank Mir takes on the 14-5-1 Czech Congo. Mir is coming off being part of the main event of the biggest grossing UFC event in history against Brock Lesnar at UFC 100 and looks to re-establish himself as a threat in the heavyweight division. For Kongo, this year has featured a knockout victory over Anthony Hardonk at UFC 97 and then dropping a unanimous decision to Cain Velasquez at UFC 99 in June. John, in this heavyweight bout, we see Frank Mir rebounding from his loss to Brock Lesnar back in July at UFC 100 and taking on a guy in Czech Kongo who really has never been in the deep waters in terms of a guy with a ground game the level of Mir's.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this fight comes down to. It's an absolute clash of styles. Czech Kongo wants to keep this fight standing and utilizes kickboxing skills to take out Frank Mir, and conversely, Frank Mir wants to avoid the stand-up game and get this fight into the ground so he can get a big victory and possibly challenge Brock Lesnar for the heavyweight title down the road. I think that Frank Mir will do whatever it takes, probably shoot in for the single or double, and if that doesn't work, if Czech Kongo sprawls, he'll probably just pull guard, go for the sweep, get side control, and go for a submission from there.
Now, with the current situation, John, involving UFC heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar and that title, I mean, the heavyweight division right now really wide open, and I mean, a win for Frank Mir here, what does that do in terms of a possible interim title situation?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the interim title. Brock Lesnar hasn't been away for that long. I think you give the guy a chance to recover, get himself healthy, and re-examine things somewhere in 2010. If Frank Mir does get a win, it only makes sense for him to face the winner of Minotauro and Cain Velasquez. His fight with Minotauro, we all know we saw the absolute best Frank Mir face the absolute worst Minotauro Nogueira. Everybody knows it, so we need to see these guys face each other again, and the winner of that should be the front runner to face the winner of Shane Carwin, Brock Lesnar.
And you're picking?
I think Frank Mir's going to do it. I think his jiu-jitsu skills are too good, and Czech Kongo's takedown defense is suspect. No disrespect to Czech Kongo, but that's what we've seen in the past. If Czech Kongo can somehow bait Frank Mir into standing, I think Czech Kongo can win this fight, but I don't think it's going to happen. Frank Mir's too experienced, has faced too many top guys, and I think he's going to get the win.
John Fitch, who many regard as the #2 welterweight in the world, steps into the octagon on Saturday night against the 10-2 Mike Pierce, who is facing the toughest fight of his career after earning a unanimous decision victory over recent UFC castoff Brock Larson at UFC Fight Night 19 in September. One would imagine with a strong performance from Fitch that a potential title shot could be in store for the AKA product. A number of headaches for matchmaker Joe Silva has put this fight between Fitch and Pierce together. John, what can you tell us about Mike Pierce for fans that only got to see him against Brock Larson last September?
Well, you talk about Brock Larson, that's the key opponent that both John Fitch and Pierce have faced. Both guys went to a decision. Mike Pierce is also a two-time state wrestling champion, as well as the former Sport Fight welterweight champion. So the guy has experience, and he has faced some top guys, being Brock Larson, but I don't think it's going to make a difference. John Fitch is way too experienced and works out with too big of a camp, I think, to lose to a guy like Mike Pierce.
And you mentioned camps here, and with a win here from John Fitch, obviously he's creeping very close to another chance at the welterweight championship, but I would think another guy in line there is his teammate Josh Koscheck, and it goes back to that conflict with AKA fighters stating that they're not willing to fight one another.
Well, what we have to do is get the scoop, because Anthony Johnson trains at American Kickboxing Academy, Josh Koscheck trains at American Kickboxing Academy, and we saw last month they faced each other, so I'm sure it comes down to the right money and the right opportunity, and maybe sometimes teammates will face each other.
You're going with John Fitch. Where is he going to win this fight?
I don't think it's going to be any surprise that John Fitch once again wins a unanimous decision.
In a fight that may very well sneak in at the last minute for Fight of the Year considerations, the 11-4 Kenny Florian restarts his journey after being shut down by lightweight champion BJ Penn at UFC 101 and will not be starting off with an easy bout as he takes on one of the hardest working lightweights in the industry with the 25-10 Clay the Carpenter Guida. John, my expectations are astronomical for this fight. I believe it has the potential to be a Fight of the Year candidate.
I can't argue with that. Both guys at the top of the 155-pound division. Both guys want to crack at BJ Penn. Kenny Florian, again, a crack at BJ Penn. Both guys well conditioned, come from good camps, and they've proven to be very exciting fighters, and I'm sure that's exactly what the fans will get to see on Saturday.
Now for Kenny Florian, he's obviously changed up camps, going from Boston to Montreal. He had the tough loss against BJ Penn. Is that almost necessary nowadays for fighters to keep evolving and not staying in one place too long?
Well, I talked to Joe Stevenson about that, and he says yes, because when you're working with the camp, they can only offer you a certain level of training where you aren't able to grow. When you move around, you can learn different things from different guys, and that's exactly what we see. We see Mark Delagrati in Boston. Now he's training with Firas Zahabi in Montreal, and I'm sure Greg Jackson is in the mix. So yeah, you have to change things up to try to always improve your game.
And Clay Guida, what's really interesting about this one as well, working a bit with Jackson's camp, and from what we hear now, Zahabi will be in Florian's corner, while Greg Jackson is going to be in Clay Guida's corner.
Yeah, it's funny because I know Firas Zahabi, and he is a big fan of Greg Jackson, calls him one of his mentors, and has learned from Greg Jackson. I think it's going to be very interesting to see the game plans from both corners, and either way, it's going to be a very exciting fight for the fans, from the coach's perspective, and I can't wait. My hands are sweaty.
Well, it's easy for me to say Fight of the Year candidate, but the reason we pay this guy the big bucks is because he's going to tell us who's going to win and how.
Oh, we know predictions really don't mean that much, but I'm going to give it a whirl. I think Kenny Florian is going to be able to get the submission victory in the 3rd round, or Clay Guida wins a unanimous decision either way.
Rounding out the main card for this Saturday is a heavyweight bout as Paul Buentello makes his return to the UFC after going 5-1 since his last UFC appearance at UFC 57 in February of 2006. The welcome back party is hosted by Netherlands product Stefan Struve. In addition to holding the distinction of the best profile picture on Sherdog, the skyscraper holds a record of 18 wins and 3 losses and is 2-1 inside the octagon with wins over Dennis Stoinich and Chase Gormley this year. John, in this heavyweight bout, they call him the skyscraper, and Stefan Struve, proving true to his name in this fight, has a full 9 inches on Paul Buentello. What kind of issues is that going to present for Buentello, who is primarily a striker?
Well, one thing I have to note, I love this matchup because stylistically you have a striker in Paul Buentello and the grappler in Stefan Struve. Buentello is the veteran, 30-some-odd years of age, Stefan Struve in his early 20s. It is a great matchup, and it will come down to who can implement their game plan. Obviously, Paul Buentello wants to sprawl and brawl, keep this fight standing, and try to knock out Struve. Conversely, Struve wants to get it down to the ground and utilize his very awesome jiu-jitsu skills, especially with those long limbs of his. He can go for triangle chokes and arm bars, any kind of submission off of his back.
And your prediction, Mr. Ramdian?
I think Paul Buentello is too experienced in this fight. I think he's going to be able to sprawl and brawl, avoid the takedown, and knock out the youngster.
In undercard action set for Saturday night, it's the 12-6 Wilson Govea meeting the 14-6 Alan the Talon Belcher in middleweight action. In a lightweight affair, Tough Season 5 member Matt Wyman, who fights out of the altitude-enhanced Denver, Colorado, will be colliding with the 12-4 Shane Nelson. Two-time NCAA Division I wrestling champion Johnny Hendricks of Team Takedown will look to improve to 7-0 when he meets another undefeated welterweight in Ricardo Funch of Team Link, and will be making his UFC debut this Saturday after signing a 4-fight deal with the promotion. Brazilian top team member, the 9-2 Jusimar Palhares, will return to the octagon for the first time since January of this year, where he meets the 35-year-old Lucio Linares, making his UFC debut. Linares has spent the majority of his career with the M1 promotion and holds a win over former UFC fighter Sean Salmon. Palhares was originally scheduled to fight Alessio Sakara at the Tough 10 finale last weekend, but Sakara pulled out of that fight and moved Palhares to UFC 107. 9-7 Ultimate Fighter Season 9 welterweight finalist DeMarcus Johnson is going to be taking on 7-1 Edgar Garcia. Garcia lost a narrow split decision to Brad Blackburn on the Tough 9 finale show in June, in a fight that many thought should have gone Garcia's way. And finally, the 7-3 Kevin Burns will tangle with Canadian welterweight product, the 14-3 TJ Grant. Grant lost his UFC debut back at UFC 100 via unanimous decision to Dong Yoon Kim. Burns is coming off consecutive losses to Anthony Johnson from last December and Chris Lytle at the Tough 9 finale in June. John, let's touch upon some of the preliminary fights that we may or may not see on Saturday night. In a middleweight contest, we're going to see Alan the Talon Belcher taking on Wilson Govea.
Yeah, I think this is a fight that may challenge Kenny Florian and Clay Guida for fight of the night. Both guys have immense skills. I think it's going to be a stand-up war. Obviously, Alan Belcher coming from that Muay Thai background, training in Milwaukee with Duke Rufus, and Wilson Govea training at American Top Team, one of the best camps in the entire sport. His stand-up skills are there. His ground skills are there. I think both guys are going to light it up, and I think Wilson Govea is going to come away with the victory and move that much closer to a shot at the title.
We'll also see the return of Canadian welterweight TJ Grant in his sophomore UFC effort following his UFC 100 loss to Dong Yoon Kim. He's going to be taking on Kevin Burns, which could be a very exciting fight at 170.
I agree. I think this is a great test for TJ Grant. Lost his last fight, and he looked good in that fight. He was in tough against a very tough individual. Kevin Burns is no slouch. This guy brought it to Anthony Johnson, and I think if TJ Grant can get past Kevin Burns, big things I'm sure are sure to come.
Last question, John. It's UFC 107 this Saturday in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, this venue was booked with the intention of having Quinton Jackson and Rashad Evans headline this card. Do you feel that that main event being taken off this card is going to hurt the show from a live perspective for the fans?
Come on, BJ Penn, Diego Sanchez. I don't need to say anymore. Two of the best lightweights in the world fighting for the title. Come on, buy some tickets.
It's the home of Elvis, Memphis, Tennessee, coming up this Saturday. It's UFC 107. For the entire Fight Network crew, John Ramdeen, I'm John Pollock. Enjoy the fights this Saturday night from Memphis.